Here is the Russian Foreign Ministry's statement, straight to the point about the United States, that the fault lies at its feet, and that its self-imposed restrictions were not reciprocated by either the U.S. and NATO, with both showing and demonstrating that they are committed to escalating these short and medium range missiles. Then we also have this ongoing saga where Donald Trump, in a spat with Dmitry Medvedev on X, said that he was ready for nuclear war. Here is what he said.
When you talk about nuclear, we have to be prepared, and we're totally prepared.
You have been on the show many times sounding the alarm about the dangers of nuclear conflict between the United States and Russia. So where are we now, given Russia's latest announcement on the end of its own self-imposed INF treaty?
Well, let's first of all keep in mind that it was Donald Trump that pulled out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty in
2018. 2018. Right?
So here we are. We're celebrating the 7th anniversary of that stupidity. The Russians, reciprocated. But what the Russians said is that we will continue to abide by the INF treaty in terms of systems so long as the United States doesn't deploy INF capable systems to Europe. The United States did deploy a INF capable system. It's a containerized system that can shoot both the SM3 SM6 missile, the SM6 variant known as the Dhaiphong, which would be a short-range missile in the surface-to-surface mode, but also the same containerized system, a derivative of the Mark 41 Aegis Ashore system, can shoot the Tomahawk. And there's no way of knowing what missile is loaded in the container system at the time. So we deployed it to Denmark, I believe, in part of a NATO exercise. We claimed that it only had the SM6 loaded up, but it doesn't matter. The Russians went, we will now begin to actively do the R&D necessary to produce our missiles, and they began the production of something called the Oreshnik missile. And in November of 2024, Russia actually did an operational test of the Arashnik, striking the Dnipro factory in Dnipropetrovsk, Ukraine. What we see happening now is simply the fact that the Russians have gone to serial production of the Arashnik. And so now, instead of having, a handful of, handmade missiles, produced to do testing, they've gone into serial production, and they are producing missiles that are going out into the field, into operational units. And they have deployed the first operational units armed with Arashnik missiles. When you deploy a system like the Arashnik, it's deployed at the regimental level. Meaning that you'll put a regiment. That means they have 3 battalions. Each battalion has 3 launchers. So we're talking 9 Arashnik missile launchers minimum, already deployed at an operating base somewhere in Russia. Belarus has announced that it will be receiving the Arashnik system by year's end, I believe. And so Belarus will also have a regiment of 9 missiles. They're getting 10 launchers because they're going to have their own training facility to train up the Belarusian troops. But the Arashnik is produced at the Vodkinsk machine building plant. It's an SS-20 analog. The SS-20 is an intermediate range missile that was eliminated during the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, something I was involved in. At that time, we estimated that the Russians or the Soviets could produce 60 to 80 SS-20 type missiles a year. That was in peacetime Cold War production. Now the Oreshnik is being produced in a quasi wartime with real world operational requirements. So my guess is that the Russians could probably up that production to around 100 or so Arashniks a year. If it's 9 Arashniks per regiment, we're talking about the Russians, and there'll be a reload capability here. Plus, the Oreshnik will be configured both for conventional and nuclear capabilities. So, let's say 59, 45. We're talking about the Russians being able to field before year's end, probably in the area of 4 to 5 regiments, a couple divisions worth of Oreshniks, and then they're just going to keep producing them. And this is a game changer. It fundamentally alters the strategic balance of power in Europe. There's nothing the United States or NATO has that can counter this, both in terms of its conventional strike, which is a new capability. The SS-20 was not a conventional system; it was purely a nuclear system, and in its nuclear mode, it just changed it put all of Europe at risk. I mean, this is the thing. Medvedev's tweet basically said, "Europe, you committed suicide because now you guaranteed any future conflict will ensure the destruction of all your beautiful cathedral spires." It's the end of Europe if they want to go to war. The Arashnik literally guarantees the destruction, physical destruction of Europe in the case of a nuclear war, and the fact that Europe will not be able to ride out a conventional war without suffering immense damage. There's nothing in the world today that can intercept an Oreshnik missile, and so this is absolutely a game changer. Does it destabilize Europe? I actually think in this case, at this point in time, brings about stability, because Europe's going insane. Literally going insane in terms of their anti-Russian rhetoric and things of this nature. There's nothing Europe can do to match the Oreshnik, and there's nothing the United States can do at the moment to match the Oreshnik. The United States is seeking to deploy what they call the Dark Eagle, a intermediate range hypersonic missile. It was supposed to be deployed last year, but we don't know how to build it. And so we have yet to operationally field this system. They're talking about maybe sometime in 2026 getting the Dark Eagle up there. But an interesting thing about Medvedev's tweet, it's not just about the Oreshnik. He said that, and other systems. The Oreshnik is a derivative of what's called the RS-26 Rubyezh, which was a missile that the Russians had under development, but it ran into problems because of the INF Treaty. The Rubyezh, deployed with a certain warhead configuration, could be flown to ranges below intermediate range threshold set by the treaty. But the problem is, if you put on a different warhead configuration, it could be flown to ranges greater. And once a missile's flown to ranges greater, it becomes an intermediate range missile as defined by the treaty. And the Russians didn't want to be seen as crossing over that threshold, so they put the deployment of the Rubyezh on hold. But the Rubyezh is, again, an SS-20 analog. It's a missile that was developed to fill the gap that was created in Russian strategic capabilities when the SS-20 was eliminated. What a lot of people don't realize during that time is that the Russians had built another missile called the Skorost missile. This was another intermediate range missile. It was built specifically for the Pershing II problem set, meaning that now when Pershing IIs, which are an intermediate range missile of the United States, deployed to West Germany, if the Pershing II went out of its garrison and went into an operational mode, the Russians didn't have anything that could immediately strike. Skorost means quick, and so the Skorost system was a system that was built to quickly respond to operational deployments of the Pershing II, so that if Russian intelligence, Soviet intelligence detected the Pershing II leaving its place, Skorost could be fired and terminate the Pershing II's existence before it could fire. The reason why I bring this up is that the Oreshnik is not the system to counter Dark Eagle. There will have to be a Skorost type analog produced to counter the Dark Eagle, so that when the Dark Eagle is deployed to Europe, if it goes to an operational place, there will be a new Russian system. And this is what Medvedev has alluded to. And I believe it's something I've been saying all along, that, the Russians will fall back on Soviet doctrine and Soviet, operational requirements set by the capabilities of NATO and the United States. And if we deploy Dark Eagle, there will be a new missile. It'll be the analog of Skorost. I don't know what they're going to call it. This is, again, game changer. It's checkmate in favor of Russia. people need to understand now that the Russians have dominance across the totality of the battlefield. I don't know if you saw Ukrainian drone operators do a post on Telegram, I think a couple of weeks ago, where they mocked NATO. They said, we're getting our asses handed to us by the Russians, who have mastered drone warfare. They hunt us down and kill us before we can launch our drones now. The Ukrainians were doing pretty well in drone warfare, but now as soon as they deploy, the Russians have done pattern of life analysis of how the Ukrainian drones operate. And the second they go operational, the Russians are killing them, slaughtering them. This is why the Russians are making the progress they are in Pokrovsk and Sumy and elsewhere, where they used to be stopped cold by Ukrainian drones. They now just power right on through. And the Ukrainian drone operators got up and said, NATO needs to understand that a NATO-style army going up against the Russians will be dead in a matter of days, destroyed, totally destroyed. And that's just using drones. Now we throw in the Russian supremacy in the missile field. And they already had it with the Iskander, the Iskander-M, the Iskander-K, the Caliber, the Kinzhal. But now we throw in the Oreshnik, which will destroy every command and control center, every major logistical center throughout Europe. None will exist when the war starts. There will be no railheads. There will be nothing. It's all gone. Conventional Oreshniks will take it out. And then you throw in the Skoros, will take out the Dark Eagle and the other analog out there, including air bases. The Russians now are, in the, ability to totally mobilize their defense industry. They will produce missiles in the hundreds. They were producing 70 Iskanders a year. They're now producing 700. This is a game, set, match, Russia. How's the United States respond? Well, we sent nuclear weapons to England, B-61-12 bombs, understand that the Arashnik will take them out too, along with all the other nuclear storage facilities. And then there's, Medvedev's famous or infamous, mean tweet. His mean tweet didn't say anything outrageous. It simply was a response to the stupidity of Lindsey Graham and others who threatened Russia with preemptive strikes. Basically saying, if you Russians don't continue this, we know how to do this. Ask the Ayatollah. It was basically a threat of, decapitation strike, first strike by the United States. And all Medvedev did is say, and we got the dead hand. The dead hand is a Cold War system known as perimeter. It's real, even though Medvedev said, if it exists, it exists. I know. I inspected at least 3 of the missiles that are associated with this system back in 1990. Those were SS-25, since then upgraded to SS-27 variants. Without getting too much detail on it, if we attempted a preemptive strike and it succeeded, let's say we killed Putin and Medvedev and everybody, blew out their command and control and all that, and we tried to take out their nukes, the perimeter has sensors all over Russia, detect radiation, detect seismic waves, and they monitor communications. And when you get a radiation detection, seismic detection, and communications no longer function, then the dead hand kicks in. These missiles that I talked about are launched. They have a broadcast capability. They don't carry warheads. They'll put out the launch codes, and everything in the Russian arsenal gets launched immediately to the United States, and the United States ceases to exist. That's the dead hand. And all Medvedev said is, you want to talk about preemptively striking us? We got the dead hand, and you'll turn into the Walking Dead. Trump apparently didn't understand that, because he does nuclear better than anybody. And he threatened to, or he said, I'm going to deploy Trident capable Ohio-class submarines. Here's the interesting thing, and I'll leave it at this. This is why it's so dangerous. The dead hand was conceived in the late 70s, fielded in the early 1980s, out of a fear that the Pershing II / Ohio-class / Trident capability gave the United States real preemptive first strike decapitation capability, especially if the Trident submarine comes close to Russian shores, Soviet shores, and fires the Tridents in a reduced trajectory, which eliminates being detected by long-range radars and provides shorter flight times. And that's why they built it. They built it because of the Trident. They built the dead hand because of the Trident, because of the fear the United States would put Ohio-class submarines near the shores and fire the Trident. So what did the president do? The president ordered 2 Ohio-class submarines to move closer to Russian shores. Now the Russian radars are going off all over the place. Russia isn't looking for a nuclear war, but Russia is not going to sit back and let the United States, carry out a preemptive strike. So now the Russian alert levels have gone up. Last fall, the CIA assessment was that there was a greater than 50% chance of having a nuclear war before year's end. We talked about this last year. I'm one of the few guys that actually knows this shit inside and out. And back then I said there's a greater than 50%. The CIA happened to agree with me. And we were very close to a nuclear war last fall. We avoided it, thankfully. It's even worse today. And it's going to get worse. We have the New START treaty that expires in February. When that's gone, there is no limitation. We will see the nuclear arsenals in both countries skyrocket as they pull out nuclear warheads in reserve. Right now, the treaty allows 1,550 operational systems, but there are thousands of warheads in reserve. And some of the ways that we've dropped our operational system is that, for instance, we take the Minuteman III missile and we make it a single warhead. But we've already exercised putting multiple warheads. We've already done it. The United States military has gone in and put multiple warheads on Minuteman III as a test of capability. We can do the same thing with the Trident. We lowered the warheads. We can increase the warheads. Overnight, if this treaty goes away, we will go from 1,550 to over 4,000 deployed nuclear warheads. Overnight. And the Russians can do the same thing. And this thing will then escalate out of control till we're talking about 20 to 30 nuclear warheads per side at a time when we have an idiot president moving to. This is a recipe for disaster. I mean, can it be avoided? I don't know. I hope. I mean, Donald Trump actually told a TASS correspondent on July 29th that he can't imagine allowing New START treaty to expire. He said, these are the kinds of things we don't allow to expire. Then what are you doing to keep it in play? Where are the negotiations? They're not happening. What's happening is the president's mouth is running away, and we're in an extraordinary dangerous situation. Anyway, that's a long answer to a short question. I'm sorry. I'll turn it over to Larry.
No. It's all right. And Larry, your assessment, Scott brought up Dmitry Medvedev, and he had this to say about the Russian Foreign Ministry's statement on the withdrawal of moratorium on the deployment of medium and short-range missiles as a result of NATO countries' anti-Russia policy. This is a new reality. All our opponents will have to reckon with. Expect further steps. So, Larry, to you.
Stories. But when I entered on duty with the CIA in 1985, September of 85, the preoccupation at that time was the issue of the deployment of the Pershing II intermediate range ballistic missile to Europe. There were mass protests in a variety of countries in Europe against that deployment. But it was out of the fear that the Europeans had that they were now vulnerable to strikes from Russia with intermediate range ballistic missiles, that the negotiations took place between Reagan and Gorbachev, and Ray McGovern was directly involved with all of that at the time. And it produced the INF treaty. It was in, I think like December of 87, they finally signed it. Now, despite the tensions that existed between the United States and then Soviet Union, because remember, we were busy funding the Mujahideen, these Islamic extremists in Afghanistan, and killing a lot of Russians, a lot of Soviet soldiers. Despite that going on, we were still able to talk and find a negotiated settlement here with the INF treaty. And it did, in fact, reduce and eliminated, for 38 years, until Bush dropped out of it, or Trump dropped out in 2018. So, roughly 33 years where that threat had abated. And as Scott did such an excellent job of pointing out, it's back. And it's back with a vengeance, because now you've got Russia uniquely equipped in a way that the West is not. And then when you get into the issues of air defense systems that are capable of shooting down either ballistic or hypersonic missiles, the United States and Europe has nothing. They have nothing that can defeat the Russian capabilities. But what's really alarming are the signals that are being sent by Washington while Donald Trump is president. Let's start with June 1st, with the spider web attack that took place at the strategic air bases throughout Russia. Now they failed, but there still was showing an intent and the capability that was then of using the drones that was then replicated a month later, or I guess 2 weeks later, in Iran with the attacks and the decapitation attack that took place. So if you're a Russian military or intelligence analyst, you're sitting here watching, say, here's the West carrying out, helping Ukraine carry out these drone attacks. And I'm sure they did get assistance out of Azerbaijan to take out our nuclear air threat from the bombers. Then that's followed up by a decapitation attack in Iran. Then that's followed up with this General Christopher Donahue, just off the cuff at a NATO meeting, talking about how quickly the United States could overrun Kaliningrad and then defeat the Russians. And saying that at the same time that Trump, and I don't know if Trump knew he was signing off on this, but Trump has to take the credit. He's president. Redeploys those nuclear gravity bombs, not just to England, but to at least, I think, 6 other NATO bases throughout Europe. First time that, we had withdrawn those in about 2008. And I don't know if the withdrawal back in 2008 was part of some treaty process or whatever, but the point was we were seeking to de-escalate the nuclear tension. Now we're doing this. And then on top of it, with Trump shooting his mouth off the way he was. I know that Judge Napolitano was interviewed by Dimitri Simes on the program that Dimitri hosts in Russia. And there were some Russian generals on there, and they were genuinely wanting to know, what the hell is the United States? Are you guys serious about this? So in the world of intelligence, the thing you want to do is remove uncertainty. You don't want to increase uncertainty and increase doubts. And everything that Trump is doing is leading to increasing doubts, increasing misunderstanding. And by that, you end up making the world more dangerous. And so I agree with Scott that I think we're in a far worse position than what the CIA projected last December.
Scott, you mentioned the New START treaty and its expiration and the dangers of that. Perhaps you could elaborate on this, given that you do have a project. This is on your Substack. You have Project 38, which is a campaign centered on the production of a documentary film, 38 minutes, seeking to put nuclear disarmament back on the table as an American policy priority. So people can donate to that in the video description after the show. But talk about the dangers of this, given these latest moves, and how you put it all together into this project.
I mean, when the project was conceived, we weren't living in total insanity. I mean, it's become even more important now than ever before, but also more difficult to implement. The only good news is that the president appears to be at least cognizant of the fact that there's a treaty and it expires, and its expiration would be a bad thing. So that's a step in the right direction, because one of the goals and objectives of Project 38 was to, make sure the president was aware of the expiration and to try and convince the president of the absolute importance to extend this treaty, until which time a new arms control vehicle could be negotiated between Russia and the United States, probably even including China. Project 38, the name 38 comes from the 38 minutes of terror felt by the citizens of Hawaii in January 13th, 2018. When at 8 a.m, the emergency broadcast system of Hawaii sent out a warning that there was a missile inbound to Hawaii. And they were to seek shelter immediately. This is not a drill. And this was at a time when the Trump administration and North Korea were, flexing their respective nuclear muscles. And the feeling was that the North Koreans had launched a nuclear weapon against Hawaii and that they were all going to die. And for 38 minutes, people actually thought they were going to die. There's a lot of very emotional testimony from people about what was going through their head. Jim Carrey, the famous comedian actor, talks about being in Maui, and he got a phone call from his producer who said, "Missiles inbound, we're going to die." She said, "Do you want to meet?" He said, "I'm not going to spend the last minutes of my life driving to you in a panic." He said, "I'm on the beach. I'm just going to sit out and look out the water and think peaceful thoughts and wait for it to happen." But people were convinced they were going to die. And so then it turned out it was an absolute mistake on the part of the emergency broadcast system. It was a drill that went live, and it was just a disaster. But the point is, the terror was real, and the fear of a missile inbound was real. And so Project 38 is the heart of it is a documentary film, 38 minutes, that I'm making, that seeks to capture those 38 minutes of terror. And the purpose to capture it is so that an audience is struck by the fact that when the missile's inbound, there's nothing you can do to make it go back. You're dead. You're literally going to die. And I want people to be put into that situation so I can ask them the question, now that you know you're going to die, if you could go back in time 6 months, what would you be willing to do to stop that missile from flying? You know, you're dead. You're going to die. What would you do to stay alive? And then the question is, why aren't you doing that now? And what Project 38 is, the now. What are we supposed to do now? And the idea is to create a documentary film and then assemble what I call a team B of people who have served in the government in a variety of roles, to include advising the president on nuclear threats, disarmament, policymakers, etc. Team B is a concept that comes out of the 1970s when the CIA produced a national intelligence estimate about Soviet missiles that the foaming in the mouth neoconservatives disagreed with. The CIA saying, "Hey, you don't have to worry too much about Soviet missiles," and they want to say, "No, we need a new arms race to justify the building of the Peacemaker, the Midget Man, small ICBM, rail-borne missiles, new submarines, the whole thing, B-2 or B-1 bombers, B-2 bombers in conceptual." And so they assembled a team B of outside experts who then put together their opposing view. What I would like to do, in recognition that the president is being advised by the worst people in the world, literally people who know nothing, are ignorant. He has some people around him who are good, but they need help. To put together a team B and seek an audience with the president or his senior advisors to brief them on this alternative viewpoint that'll be fact-based, based on reality, not on theory and not on ideology. To convince the president of the absolute necessity of extending New START. All I want is an extension. This is the easiest thing in the world. Extend it 3 to 5 years so that we don't have the cap removed, so that we can keep the cap low and we can begin a process of negotiation. But the Russians are like, what is there to negotiate? You don't even want to talk to us. You still have this ridiculous policy of seeking the strategic defeat of Russia. Why in God's name would we get rid of the one thing that prevents your strategic defeat from ever happening, our strategic nuclear forces? So there needs to be a whole bunch of changes underway. That's not the purpose of Project 38. That would be the purpose of what comes after Project 38. Project 38 is simply about extending the New START treaty and the measures there. So there are some things underway. The film is being produced. There's some other things I hope to announce in a week that are happening. The bringing together Team B, and then once we get that done, to begin a PR campaign to take the film out there, show it, to generate support. So that in December we can go down to Washington, D.C., hold a gathering at the National Press Club, get a large LED screen, mobile screen, put it in Lafayette Park and play the movie for the president, make sure it can be seen by the Oval Office, and seek the audience and make the case, and hopefully get the president to agree that come February 4th, I believe it is, that this treaty will not expire, it will be extended. But this is going to require a lot of work, both here in the United States and in Russia. I mean, we actually need the Russian help on this one. We need Russia to, indicate that it would be receptive to this. Right now, I mean, look, we just had the Russians say, you guys scrapped the INF treaty. We're now deploying INF systems. This is true. This is tough. The Russians are right. There's no reason you can't say they're wrong to do this, but we're headed in the wrong direction. And so, Project 38 is, I think it's one of the most necessary projects that I could think of. I mean, I did Operation Dawn last year, which was designed to bring to the attention of the world the danger of nuclear war and trying to get candidates to commit to policies that avoid it. But through the grace of God and luck and everything else, we navigated those shoals. And I think Operation Dawn helped. Danny, you were an important part of that. Larry, you as well. I mean, this was a team effort, and I'm looking for a team effort on Project 38. So you can go to my Substack, scottritter.com. You'll see the Project 38 button. You can read about Project 38. And, I hate to ask for money, but I'm just telling you, these things don't happen for free. I mean, just getting the National Press Club, which was essential to Operation Dawn. I just want to say the briefing we did at the National Press Club helped turn the corner to get things done that avoided a nuclear war or helped avoid a nuclear war. But that's a $12,000 to $15,000 proposition, just renting that space. And this can only happen with help. So if there's people that think this is a good project, go to scottritter.com, go to the donate button and donate. I will tell you that the donations that have been received so far, I don't want to, I can't say anything right now, but this time next week, you'll understand what your donations did. And then by the end of the month, you'll understand, or I think mid-September, you'll understand even more. We have momentum. We're moving in the right direction. I'm very optimistic. And Larry, you've known me a long time, and I'm generally a pessimistic kind of person. I mean, I always try to do the right thing, but I'm always, well, it's tough to. I am extraordinarily optimistic, and you'll know more why next week. But it's only because of the support that's been received. So I want to thank everybody who supported this project to date, and I'll give preemptive thanks to those people who might be considering to support it. There's other things we do though. Waging Peace was a project that was stopped. Did I tell you, Danny? Do you know the good news? The really weird news?
What's
Larry,
that?
are you aware of this as well? I got my passport.
Look at that. Amazing.
And it's amazing when you get a passport, lots of options happen. Like you can begin waging peace again, which was going over to Russia and doing things to, capture that. Waging peace, also was stuff that we did here. As in June, we did a U.S.-Russian Citizens Summit, sort of a 40th anniversary of the 1985 space bridge. It was very successful, got a lot of attention. And there's people that want to continue that. So we will be continuing this, working to do various summits throughout the United States and trying to get the Russians excited about that as well. Citizen diplomacy, it's a very important element of this. So the Waging Peace project is still on. And, we're just going to keep moving forward. Look, Danny, Larry, this is a team effort. We are part of what I call a family of podcasts and a family of podcasters. We collectively have the ability to influence millions of people. The videos that we collectively produce, and we're pretty much all on the same wavelength. We may differ on, nuance here and nuance there, but we're on the same side, the same team, the same wavelength. When we put our minds together, we actually have greater impact than CNN, Fox, and others. And, what we're doing here, what you're doing here today, Larry, what you do is very important. Just so everybody knows, Larry, you went to Moscow earlier this year and interviewed Sergei Lavrov. I mean, that's a home run kind of thing. You've done other meetings. You work behind the scenes. You work in the shadows because I guess that's where you're comfortable working with your damn Hawaiian t-shirts. But yeah, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I muted you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I said a face made for radio. Just keep me out of sight.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all have a face made for radio. Unfortunately, we got this StreamYard, but the point is, collectively, we can make a difference. It's us, the talking heads here, and it's the people watching. I mean, we actually have the ability to do very important work. This is what being a good citizen, both a citizen of the nation and a citizen of the world, is all about. So, again, thanks for allowing me to talk about it, Danny.
Yeah, sure.
I've got a new book out again. I'm plugging the book not because my publisher wants me to, although they'll be happy that I do it, but because it's relevant. It's called Highway to Hell. It's the Armageddon Chronicles from 2014 to 2025. There couldn't be a more timely book because it's everything we just talked about is predicted in the book and discussed in the book and furthered in the book. This is about the absolute insanity, the insane road that we're on right now with Donald Trump and these non-experts, and the importance of arms control. So if you want a primer to bring you up to speed on why Project 38 is important, why extending the New START treaty is important, Highway to Hell is a good place to start.